Hello, everyone. My name is Mary Mendenhall, and I'm a faculty member in the International and Comparative Education program here at Teachers College. My work focuses on refugee education policies and practices, primarily in East Africa. And I teach a course pretty much every year called Education in Emergencies. The title of my very short talk today, Amplifying Refugee Teachers' Voices and Experiences in the Classroom and Beyond, acknowledges that teachers working in education and emergencies and forced migration contexts already have a voice and agency, but that we can join them in our efforts to share their stories, or in their efforts, I should say, to share their stories. So I started working in Kakuma refugee camp over 10 years ago. Many of you might know it's located in northwestern Kenya. It was established a very long time ago in the early 1990s. And they're refugees from multiple countries, but the two biggest being South Sudan and Somalia. And in teaching about education and schooling in refugee contexts, I find it helpful to integrate imagery and teacher stories into my lessons. In talking about forced migration and displacement, students are confronted with big numbers and statistics about displaced communities and populations, and it's just hard to wrap our collective heads around those figures sometimes. And so I think it helps for students and others to hear the stories of the individuals. So for example, I can tell my students, right, that teachers and students in these settings are in overcrowded classrooms, but that might not do justice compared to an image, as you see on the screen, that captures some of that same information. I might share that teachers and students are confronted with a lack of teaching and learning materials, or classrooms for that matter. But an image can give the students time to reflect on what that means in the day-to-day work of going to school and trying to teach and to learn. And of course, we have to be mindful about the way we use imagery and be cautious not to take a deficit approach in this work and to only talk about victimhood or talk about victimhood at all, but talk about the agency and the resilience that we all know in our work. And it's really important to capture a balanced portrayal of those realities in any time or place, and to talk about that with our students. And so in this case, to show the successes, the joy, the dedication that many teachers, for example, do demonstrate despite the challenges and the barriers that they might be confronting. And in addition to photographs, I have used short videos through which teachers can tell their own stories. And so in the examples you see here, teachers were able to briefly introduce themselves. They were able to share personal accounts of the learning settings in their schools. They could describe the challenges that teachers and learners face in these contexts, and they could provide a platform for inquiry-based learning during which students can then, our students on this side, can then grapple with the opportunities and challenges of what they are learning from these teachers. In this case, after my students watched the short videos, they worked in small groups to identify and troubleshoot the practice and policy-based challenges that the teachers raised in the videos. This approach of inquiry-based learning is a form of active learning that starts by posing questions, problems, or scenarios. And in this case, real life situations proposed by refugee teachers working in Kakuma refugee camp. These videos could be easily used, obviously, in face-to-face classrooms for both large and small group viewing and discussion, or on Zoom, as we did last semester, where we asked a handful of responsible students to show the videos during virtual breakout room discussions. And an important point about these videos, we produce them in collaboration with Film Aid, an NGO that works in the camp, and we were able to pay the refugee filmmakers and directors to assist with the video production in this effort. And so just lastly, some, I think, important considerations for faculty and for students who are planning to become faculty to consider. It's helpful to seek to develop these resources once we have established a strong and positive working relationship, one that comes through longer term engagement in a field site, and in an effort to mitigate the extractive nature of some of these exchanges. It's helpful to make an effort to co-develop the materials in collaboration with the participants, which is what we did in this kind of co-scripting of the videos you saw a moment ago. And then kind of this ongoing seeking of consent, right? We might develop these materials for one particular audience or class or event, and then we find it useful for other opportunities. And so we need to be sure to explain how they're going to be used to what audiences and to seek consent. In our case, we had initially developed the videos for an on-campus kind of highly interactive workshop, but then found immediately that they would be useful for the classroom setting, and then later for a side event that we organized at the United Nations General Assembly. And so we continue to go back to our collaborators and seek their consent. And finally, it's always important to think about reciprocity in our work. So, an easy fix, if you will, when taking photographs, for example, we might consider printing the photos and providing them to the participants when appropriate. Or as I mentioned before, being able to actually pay for the work that the refugee, in this case through film aid, were able to provide. And so just, and final comment, in these efforts, we want to strive to uphold and respect the experiences and expertise of refugee teachers in this case, and others that you're all working with, and what they have to share with the rest of us. So I'll stop there. Thank you very much.